Would you please rise in spirit for the reading of the Holy Gospel? The Gospel lesson this morning comes to us from Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him." And hearing this, Herod the king was troubled, and all Jerusalem as well. And assembling all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. They told Herod, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it is written by the prophet, 'And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who will govern my people Israel.' Then Herod summoned the Magi secretly, ascertained from them what time the star appeared, and sent them to Bethlehem, saying, 'Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, that I too may come and worship him.' When they heard the king, they went their way. And the star which had been seen in the east went before them, till it came to rest over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy, and going into the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother. They offered the child gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. And being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed to their own country by another way. May God add understanding to the reading of this gospel.
Join me in the Gloria.
Glory be to the Maker, and to the Christ, and to the Holy Ghost, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Amen.
You may be seated. I know that writing a sermon is supposed to be a very serious matter, but I have to tell you that when I was watching the New Year's Eve special on CNN, Leslie Jordan beamed down to the stage, and there with Anderson Cooper and Andy Cohen, he said, "Oh, I feel like breaking into a song of We Three Queens of Orientar." Next year, I think maybe we'll try to have 3 drag queens open the service with that song. How to have an epiphany. God, once again, I present myself to you as your humble servant. Give me today the words that may bring others into a closer walk with you on the faith journey they are on this particular day. Remove me from myself and allow a new awareness of where I am on my own journey. Amen. Today we commemorate the arrival of the Magi at the humble birthplace of the Christ child. A day of Epiphany. This week I contemplated a very odd question. How do we have an epiphany? Epiphany continues to happen when minds and souls are open. Manifestations of divinity come to us when we open our eyes widely enough. If we remove our blinders of fear and prejudice, new light will shine through. Revelatory manifestations of divinity surprise us with newness, just as the revelation of the divine being lying in the animal trough startled the Magi. These folks that we like to commonly refer to as the wise men were actually people with a past. The only way that became a new creation was because they knew where they came. These Magi knew that the evil, dark heart that existed of the great King Herod. They knew of the prejudice and the oppression that this man was made of. It was these things from the past that allowed them to find the strength to find the new truth for themselves, the courage to follow a different star and to have a new beginning. It was the fact that they had already faced oppression, that they were able to proclaim liberation to those stuck in the past. It was their willingness to say, "We deserve better," that allowed them to show others that better things are on the horizon if we are willing to have the Epiphany or the Great Awakening. We also have seen these same things in the world we live in today. Yes, I know that for many of us, the most recent year that just ended may be just the thing to give us the motivation to find our own epiphany. I encourage you also to think back to a time when you were not allowed to worship the God of our creation, the God of our very being. Think back to the times when you were oppressed or denied your rights. These are the times when we can and will experience a new epiphany if we are willing to be the light as the Christ child was the light given to us all. For us to truly have an epiphany, we must have lived life. We must have a past experience to want to live a new life. These are the moments that an epiphany can happen in our lives. A wonderful story that I read this week, and I don't even know where I found it, as I was preparing for this sermon, was about how the three Magi appeared before the Christ child. They didn't rush off. They didn't just drop the gifts off and say, "See you, Mary. See you, Joe." They stopped. They didn't rush back to their original journey. At the moment that the Magi arrived at the birthplace of the Christ child, they laid the gifts down, and then they did something else. They picked that child up and looked into the eyes of that child. Each of them held that child and loved upon the child and gooed and carried on like you would with any newborn babe. It was at that moment that they had the dream not to return to the same life they had, but to lead anyone that wanted to follow them and find a new life of freedom and liberation. A life without oppression and denial, but a life of acceptance and excitement. That was their great epiphany. The moment they recognized their own past and the lives they had lived was the moment they had the great epiphany. I think that the great part of the epiphany of the Magi was not that they had the moment, but that they recognized that moment and allowed others to find the light of that Christ child within them. That is what we are called to do as we celebrate a great new epiphany. Think about the times in your life when you have been told, two women can't sit together in church and hold hands. The times that you have heard someone say to a young boy, "Don't dress up like a girl." Or you've heard someone say, "Man up." When you can look at those people and say, "I have a better way," that's when you've had an epiphany. This is how far I am from movies and TV shows. We got a great gift this year for Christmas of Netflix. There's been a movie out for a couple of years that I wanted to see called The Two Popes. A lot of people probably wouldn't like it, but to me it was very wonderful. The Pope, having evening prayer, put out the candles, and the smoke went down. Stood up. That was the moment that Pope had a new epiphany. I'm not building the church. Let me step back. I'm not hearing God. Let me sit down and let God move on this earth. At the very end of the 2-hour movie, the two popes sitting together watching the World Cup. One says to the other as the team gets a little rough, "Oh, don't worry about it, it's just part of the game." And then the other one gets up and says, "Oh, that was my team. That's part of the game. Don't worry about it. It's okay." At the end of that mutual admiration, at the end of that excitement, at the end of that, a candle just outside the room they were sitting in, its flame burned out, and the smoke went up. A new epiphany was seen. Are you willing to answer and have your epiphany today? Are you willing to challenge yourself to accept it? Let each minute of your life be a moment of a big epiphany. as you bring forth the Christ light that is within you. God, I ask this day that you allow us to be filled with the awe and the excitement of the great awakening which you have for us this day as we commemorate the Epiphany, the arrival of the Magi, not the wise men, but the wise at heart, the wise at spirit, the ones who followed, God forgive me, the stars. For when you have enough faith to look above and find your star, let that be your guiding light. And fear not, for that's the beginning of your Epiphany.